Okay, so this is a question we get a lot, right, Nadine? Mm-hmm. What's the question?
So most of our patients here work a desk job. So you're sitting for hours at a time, really long periods in the same position, sitting at a desk. One of the reasons that I enjoy being a physical therapist is because I get to move around all day, so I don't have to be in one position for 8 hours at a time. But if you do for your job, we are going to talk about what are a few things that I can do when I'm done working. So you've been sitting in a chair all day and then you get up and everything just kind of hurts, your low back is bothering you and your body just really doesn't feel good. What are, 3 of the best things that I can do for myself when I get up from sitting for a really long time for work?
Okay, yeah. And before we give you those 3, we're gonna give you just a couple things to do if you're stuck at your desk, because, you gotta work, right? So, so the first thing I like to tell patients is the height of their chair matters, right? So if you look at me here from the side, if my chair's down low, where my hips are level with my knee, then my back's in more flexion, which will tend to bother it. So the key is to have a chair height where your hips are higher than your knees, and to move forward to the edge of the chair a little bit. And this position opens your hips up, puts your back into a little bit of extension and doesn't bother your back quite as much. And then you can maintain this position for a little while, but then it's okay to even, sit and lean back a little bit too. So those are, if you have to be at your desk and you have to be seated, that's my first recommendation. Now, if they have the ability to do what Nadine's doing right now, which is, Nadine?
Which is standing, then you can stand and work. A lot of people have the desks that can go up and down. So some people will say, well, I switched to a standing desk, so I stood all day, and then my back was killing me, right? So you shouldn't sit all day, but you shouldn't stand all day. So if you can go between positions, that's the best place you can be.
Yeah, what's my saying?
This is a saying that the best position is the next position.
Yeah, it's not really mine. I didn't come up with it, but it's true. And it's basically like your body was meant for movement. Hello, mission move. That's why we called it this. The only time you should really be still is sleeping at night. But yeah, like Nadine said, a standing desk is great, but switching back and forth between standing and sitting is probably the best, actually. And then if you have to sit for a while, a couple things that you can do to get out of that position that will help you from being sore later in the day. So the first one that I'll show you is, I call these just standing back extensions. And so when you're sitting, your body's in flexion is how I see it. And you basically want to just extend in the opposite direction. So I kind of think of it as a pendulum. It's like the pendulum shifting towards a lot of flexion. Let's just shift it back towards extension. The easiest way to do that is just to put your hands on your hips and just relax and lean back. Now you don't want to do this forcefully, it's not a big muscle contraction. Don't try to do it as hard as you can. It's just more of just a weight shift. Just shift it forward and back a little bit. You'll feel it pinching in your low back just a little bit, but the more you do it, the less you'll actually feel it. And so we have some of our back patients do this 10 reps, right? 10 back extensions once an hour. That much. You'd have a hard time doing too many of these, I would say, right? So it's just sort of like, if you're sitting, if you've been sitting for 30 minutes and you get up and your back's a little sore, just do 10 of these. All right, what's the next thing?
All right, next thing is we can do the couch stretch.
Yeah.
So we're gonna come over this way. So the other thing that happens when you've been seated for a long time is your hips can get very tight, right? Because you're in this kind of 90-degree position between your trunk and the top of your thigh here. So we want to be able to stretch that out the other way. So we're going to come at it from the bottom now. Instead of in standing, you're going to be in a kneeling position. This blue pad is just for the hard floor, but if you have a carpet, you likely don't need anything like that. So you're going to come into this kind of 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, and elevated position. And then once you're here, the key is to tuck your hips underneath you, right? So if you have a big arch in your low back, you're gonna tuck the hips underneath you, take that arch out, and then you're just kind of lean forward. So you should feel this major stretch kind of going down the front of your leg into the quads and hip flexors. You can hold this one for about 30 seconds. If you squeeze the glute more repetitively, you can kind of come in and out of a more intense stretch there. So just like Joel said, we're kind of going the other way on the pendulum between being in flexion and being in extension.
Okay, so then the thing that we probably recommend people the most, and not everyone can do this, just depends on the setting, but most people can, is to go for a walk, right? I mean, and this helps you on so many different levels. And, but yeah, walking is one of the best things you do. So Nadine, do you want to show us what walking looks like?
Sure.
All right, let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah, that looks good. All right. Are you gonna come back? Oh boy. All right, well, hopefully Nadine will come back, but walking is really good. And what it does is it takes the pressure, a lot of times with the flexion, is there's quite a bit of pressure on the discs, right? And so when you get upright with all the things that we're doing, that unloads the discs a little bit. That really helps with your back, especially if you're having some symptoms going down into your buttocks and legs. So if you are someone who has to sit a lot, do all these tips that we outlined today to help unload your back, and you should feel a lot better. And hopefully we'll get Nadine back sometime soon. I guess you'll have to tune in next time to see if she ever came back.